Hello, everyone. So, welcome to our virtual event space. My name is Allie. I'm your host for this afternoon. And as much as I wish we were all here in person, we so appreciate you all showing up to support indie bookstores, even online. So, tonight, or today, I guess, I'm so excited to be introducing Brianna Bourne and Kelly McWilliams here to discuss their books, You and Me at the End of the World and Agnes at the End of the World. But before we get into the fun stuff, I just want to quickly thank you all so much for tuning in and for buying books. So for those of you who may not know, we are an independent bookstore with 3 locations in the Seattle area, and your support really is what keeps us here selling books, and we really love what we do. So if you also love what we do, we would so appreciate it if you swing by and grab copies, or if you're not local, we do ship. I will be linking books in chat all afternoon. So it should be super easy to go and find them. And we are so, so grateful for your support. While you're over on the website, I definitely encourage you all to check out some of our other upcoming events. We have an exciting roster coming up over the next few months. And if you'd like to stay in touch with our community, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's a weekly update about events and exciting releases, our online book clubs, and blog posts, etc. And of course, you can follow us on any of the major social media platforms. We are at Third Place Books or at Third Place Books Kids for the YA crowd for the quickest updates and recommendations. So we are here for about an hour, and towards the end, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions, which we very much hope that you do, go ahead and leave those in the Q&A box, which should be either at the top or the bottom of your screen. It is different than the chat box, which is great for virtual applause and connecting with each other. So let us know where you're from or your latest favorite read. But when it comes time for questions, definitely make sure those end up in the Q&A so we can most easily find them. And finally, there are some auto-generated closed captions available from the menu at the top or bottom of your screen. Select the 3 dots and you will find them in there. And I believe that that is all of my housekeeping. So without further ado, I am so thrilled to introduce 2 authors with 2 books about 2 very different apocalypses. First, joining us all the way from England, we have Brianna Bourne, whose debut novel, You and Me at the End of the World, just came out today. So happy book birthday. It is about a post-apocalyptic love story in which 2 teens wake up one morning and find they are the only 2 people left in the world. And second, Kelly McWilliams is here to discuss her first novel since 2007, Agnes at the End of the World, in which a young woman escapes a religious cult only to find the rest of the world already succumbing to a deadly virus. So thank you both so much for being here. I am so excited to be a fly on the wall for this conversation. If you need anything, of course, give me a shout. I will be listening. Same goes for you in the audience. I will be in chat. And with that, I'm going to pass you off to our authors. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Allie.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
Hi, Kelly.
Brianna and I wrote an article together. It's on the Nerd Daily, and so we've met before, and it's just always really good to see your face, and especially on your book birthday, which is such an exciting day. How are you feeling?
Really good, amazing. It's been really lovely. I've got like some flowers and just like notifications are rolling in, so it's been really nice. Yeah.
I love it. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Sure, yeah. I don't know how much more I can say that Allie didn't say. So You and Me at the End of the World follows 2 very different teenagers, Hannah and Leo, after they wake up to find that they're the last boy and girl in the world. So as they explore their empty city, they don't have parents, school, friends, anything to like get in the way. And they start to realize who they want to be, and they can be themselves with each other in a way they wouldn't have been able to had there been all of that other stuff around them. But nothing about the city is quite as it seems. So if they don't figure out what's going on, they might get ripped apart. Not literally.
Well, you never know. That was the thing, was like there was so much suspense in this story, and it's such an amazing work of just sort of speculative fiction. Like it really nails that genre so well. I did not see the ending coming at all. And I can normally guess it, but I was on the edge of my seat. And most of all, I was really entranced by the love story between Hannah and Leo. And I just thought you did such an amazing job of building this, you know, what seems to be apocalyptic landscape that brings them together. These sort of opposites attract. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what it felt like creating that love story in this space.
Yeah, so that was like kind of what I'd always set out to do. Like that was the first kind of, I wanted to write this story about these two people who were so different. And like, if they'd passed in the hallways, they would have been like, oh, well, you know, they're cute, but like, I can't go there or whatever, for whatever reasons. And I knew I wanted them to be really like super alone. And then I kind of had to figure out what could possibly make them be alone in such an intense way. And I came up with like a brainstormy list, and I picked one, which I can't say. And so that was like kind of the genesis of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the book is told from two different perspectives. We get Hannah's perspective and Leo's perspective. Hannah is very much interested in well, she's kind of embroiled in her ballet life. She's sort of it says on the back, like music box, perfect ballerina. And then Leo is more of this sort of rebel without a cause young man who's really into rock music and things that are shred-tastic. I feel like I sound dorky saying that, but like, I loved seeing them together, and they absolutely leapt off the page to me. Is there a character between the two of them that you identify more with?
Probably Hannah. Like I'm a bit of an overthinker, and so is Hannah. And when she wakes up in this world, she's just completely like, what is going on? And she's really worried. And like, I think I would be a bit like that. Whereas Leo reacts in a different way. And he's kind of like, well, let's try to make the most of it. But he's also like deep down, he's shaken, you know?
So it's a really just beautiful and gripping love story. But I think that the elephant in the room for both of our books is that we wrote about apocalyptic or seemingly apocalyptic landscapes in a time that became, unbeknownst to us, quite apocalyptic feeling. How has it been just bringing this book out now?
Yeah, because this is something we talked about a lot, because we wrote these like, you know, long before we'd even heard the word COVID. And like, I don't know, my book sold, and I did do some edits on it like after that, and during the pandemic and stuff, but it has been really weird. And this, I spent a lot of time like creating this empty city as kind of a playground for readers to imagine what it would really be like if you were the last person and the streets were all empty. And then like that kind of like, we started seeing that on TV and like out our windows, and like I can really easily find images for my book now. Like I can find empty street images and stuff. So yeah, it was really, really weird. But I also think, you know, like Hannah and Leo are facing like a similar kind of isolation that we've kind of all felt. I mean, we've been stuck in our houses, and they've had everything taken away from them in a different way. But I'm hoping that it, will feel, you know, accessible because of what we've all been through in the past year and a half.
Yeah, I think it absolutely will. It was, I read this book, the advanced copy, in, I want to say April, and it really spoke to me about sort of what I was seeing outside my windows. It's set in the West in Texas, and I sort of felt that way, like you could blow down your street like a tumbleweed and not see anybody. And I also wrote a story that was set in the West. Agnes at the End of the World takes place in Arizona. And our books are very different, but I feel like on the themes of uncertainty, on the themes of sort of fear of the unknown, they kind of harmonize in a really interesting way.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that when my book came out last June, so the June when sort of we all realized that we were going to be in this for the long haul. Do you remember it used to be just like 2 weeks we were going to be in?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I remember like I got, a phone call from my publicist, and she was like, so you're bringing out a pandemic book, like during a pandemic. And we had to talk about sort of how to message that and how to handle that. And the thing that was really important to me was that, of course, it can be triggering to read a book about, in my case, a pandemic. In your case, I think it's actually quite different. It just has that sort of, it's just the landscape, that empty landscape. But I think I knew that my book had a message in it that I wanted readers to hear at this time. And so for me, it actually felt even more urgent to like get this book to them, this story about what it's like to be facing something that's unimaginable, something that you never could have predicted, something that sort of rocks your whole world. So my hope for your book as well is that it sort of lands in readers' hands who just really need to hear this message. And I think sort of that it's really about the importance of being together and what we can find in common humanity. So yeah, it's a beautiful story.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I've been thinking a little bit about how like stories are, they can be like either a how-to guide or like a cautionary tale. So like, as you go along this journey with Hannah and Leo, you can see like how they cope with isolation and maybe I shouldn't do that, or I should, try to do that. So it is, and that's what story can do for people is give them a guide or a warning.
And we definitely talked about this a little bit in working on our article, that there's a way in which sort of being a teenager always feels like the end of the world, because everything that is being ripped away from you that you knew, you're about to embark on this new journey, sort of being an adult. And I just love what Hannah and Leo are able to learn about themselves over the course of this story. Can you give us any insight into sort of things insights they were able to gain from this?
Yeah, I guess like, so they both kind of come from opposite ends of the spectrum. Like Hannah has like a lot of very high expectations like put upon her, and Leo's the opposite. Like nobody really expects anything of him, and they've just taken that to heart, and they think that that's their life, and it's all laid out in front of them. So I would like readers to see that as they kind of shift their thinking and really try to figure out who they want to be, that there are other possibilities as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really a coming of age story in the best sense. And I actually wish that I could like ship this book back to teenage Kelly, because I think she would have really gotten a kick out of it. But that's like the reason that I love writing young adult fiction, is exactly that story, that sort of being put through a test or a trial that reveals to you something really important about who you are and who you want to be in the future, at a moment when you actually have the power to make those changes. And one of the things that's beautiful about your book too is that so much of it hinges on art and music and dance and writing. And so I could tell reading it that you were like a super artistic person who really valued the arts. What do you think sort of the arts can give to us now in these, oh my God, I'm just gonna say these uncertain times. I'm really sorry.
Well, it's accurate. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I think we've all really like leaned on art and music a lot. Like, I mean, I know I've watched more Netflix than is healthy. But like, those are the kind of things that like remind us that we're, still human and still here, and like we can still create. And I know a lot of people have had, have struggled to create during this time, but like it's so important to keep that all going just for our own, mental health and everything. Like, yeah, music and art and writing are really important to me, and that definitely did come across in their characters. And I tried to stuff everything in there. I don't know.
Can you tell me about where the inspiration first came from for this book?
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit because it was really interesting how we had some similar like origin stories. So I did know that I wanted to write like a love story with two opposites, but it didn't really like crystallize until I had this image of a girl walking down like a very wide highway, and she was barefoot for some reason, and her feet were like burning on the asphalt. And it was just the rest of the city was completely silent. And it was just this image of this girl. And I was like, what would it be like if you were just like the last person in your city, and you had no idea, you had just woken up and and everyone was gone and you had no idea what happened to them. And so it all really started from there and exploring those feelings.
Yeah, I had like an eerily similar image, Agnes at the end of the world. I just imagined this young woman, this 16-year-old girl walking through the desert, and she was taking care of a small child, and she was actually pushing him in a shopping cart. And she clearly, you know, was running from something, and I knew she had to be running to somewhere, but I couldn't conceive of where that was. And I sort of ended up having her chased out from this cult. She's in a terrible fundamentalist cult, loosely based on the Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints out in the West here. And when she escapes from that, the sort of irony is that she escapes into this terrible pandemic that has sort of Walking Dead zombie style vibes, and the world that she was trying to flee to no longer exists. So she's caught in this in-between space. And in the end, I think like one of the things that our books really have in common is we write about that in-between space. You know, what do you do when, you know, the past no longer makes sense and you don't know what the future is going to be? Like, what is that space that you're going to navigate?
Definitely, yeah. And there was something I pulled out that you'd said in our article, that they're both like character studies in an apocalypse. It's not about like the action. It's not like about, you know, running from exploding cars and like trying to get to a bunker. Like these are not that kind of apocalypse story. They're like, they are about like how people emotionally handle a change of that magnitude.
For sure. And, you know, I have always been drawn to apocalyptic fiction and sci-fi stories that put characters into extreme situations. And I completely agree with you. Like, for me, it's never about the exploding cars. I'm always like, please stop exploding. It's more about that test of character, that test of mettle, and what would you do? And I think that whenever you see a character in a circumstance like that, there's a scene that was just like my favorite scene to write in this book, where Agnes's sister Beth is trapped in this basement, and she has to escape from her cult and also from a monster that's really coming to get her, and she has to dig inside herself and see, does she really want to live? It's like those moments where you get to see the inside of a person. That's like what science fiction and speculative fiction is really about for me. And I love seeing that in you too, because you can read a lot of books that are just about exploding cars. But it also, you know, it really asks the question of the reader too, like, what would you do if you were in this circumstance? And I mean this in the nicest way, like it's almost like, you know, a video game premise in that way. Like, you're sort of forced to imagine yourself in those shoes. And I love that about the book too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And also your characters didn't make any very silly mistakes. That wasn't. They seem like real people navigating a very bizarre situation.
Very bizarre, for sure.
Did you have like a favorite chapter or a favorite scene to write?
Ooh, well, you know, I always like the kissing scenes. That's like a bit of a spoiler, but yeah, romance lover. What else did I really like? I actually like, there was a scene that used to be the beginning of the book that I really loved, and I needed to like go through it to kind of explore those like emotions of waking up, but it ended up being a little bit redundant. But I really liked that scene too. I don't know.
Yeah, I also have some cutting floor scenes that I really liked and worked really hard on that did not make it into the book, and that's that writing process for you.
Yeah.
But I actually, my favorite scene is, I always like to write the almost kissing scene.
Oh, yes.
Even more fun. And
There
this
are several of those in
yes, the near kiss. And this is purely for me, but what tips would you give an aspiring sort of love story and romance writer about how to make sort of a sizzling relationship?
Yeah, I've been asked this a lot recently. So I don't know, I get like really into, I like to really slow a scene down. I think that really helps, like in those almost kiss moments, like just like to really notice every little detail and just like think about how you would feel, or you felt the first time that you had a kiss, or just really slow it down and get in there to those moments. What else? I think that's the big one. Yeah, just slow it down, loads of details, like, you know, even physical details in the character, like, you know, this is really cliche, but heart pounding and, you know, that kind of stuff. But obviously it's conveyed better in my novel, I hope.
Really, I was flipping through it right before this, and there was a moment where Hannah was thinking about like just what an attractive sternum Leo has, and I was like, that feels true, you know. That feels like life.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So can you tell me a little bit about your writing process? I know that this is always important for aspiring writers. We all want to sort of, and honestly, even not aspiring, just like writing, we all want to know sort of what the day is like, what the work is like, and how it feels to you.
Yeah, I find that it changes a lot depending on whether I'm drafting or revising. So I've been working on my second book, and it took me about 5 months to do a first draft. And I did that, I would probably say, you know, I probably put like 30 hours a week into it, like usually at bedtime, like after bedtime, my kids' bedtime, and on the weekends and stuff. So 30 hours a week for 5 months, created the first draft. I'm about to go into edits. So I had like a month off where my editor was reading that. And then I'll probably do the same thing. Like, I'm really lucky that, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mom as well as a writer. So I can do all of the writing at night and on the weekends. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, it does feel like, you know, you have to sit down and put in the hours, and for revisions, like you can't just kind of like make little surface changes here and there. Sometimes you really need to like get in there and rip everything apart and build new scenes and rewrite things. And that's one of the major things that I did with You and Me. Before I got an agent, I was in this mentorship program, and I rewrote the entire thing like from scratch. Like I had a draft and it was all right, but like I knew something could be better, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And it was leaning like, you know, there's two parts of the book. There's two, you know, genres, the romance and the speculative. And I didn't know like what the balance really should be. So I ended up completely rewriting the whole thing, which was really scary, but was so worth it in the end.
I feel like this is sort of a little known writing secret, that like the first draft you write, you know, you can feel great about writing the end, but that's really unlikely to be the book that is going to be in print, because I think you have to figure out what sort of a story you're writing in your own mind, and you can only do that sort of out on paper. I did the exact same thing with Agnes. I wrote the draft and then had to do a complete overhaul, to the point where I was like, I'm just going to set this aside and start on page 1 again and completely rewrite again. And then after that, it was, you know, blood and guts renovation, like tearing out whole chunks and whole sections. And it taught me so much. And I guess I wish that people would speak about that more, that, you know, your draft, you know, you can do NaNoWriMo, you can do all these things. It's not the actual work. That's sort of just the warm up. And you're really going to get into. Yeah, and so like even now it actually takes the pressure off. I was just completed my next novel, which is called Mirror Girls. It comes out February 9th. And I knew, you know, when I wrote the first chapter and was going to send it out for proposal, I was like, oh, should I stress about this? Should I edit the language? And I was like, no, there's like a 3% chance that these words will appear in the final book. So revision sort of being the work is really something that I feel that I learned. I also wrote a genre mashup. You know, Agnes at the End of the World is an apocalyptic story and a pandemic book. I would say that's one genre. And then it's also a cult novel. And I had the exact same experience of like, how do I balance these two things? Because you can talk about cults all day long, especially these fundamentalist, you know, patriarchal cults. That's books and books right there. That's a whole library. And then I needed to bring in these scarier sort of apocalyptic pandemic elements. And it threw the gears out of whack. So I was also just really excited to meet you, because it's another sort of genre mashup fan. And I'm wondering if you're doing something similar in your second book.
I am. Like, there's definitely an element to it that doesn't exist in our world as we know it. So I do seem to be drawn to, like, you know, just change this one thing, and it just completely makes you look at the world and life and death in a different way. So that's in there again, but it's more upfront this time. Like for You and Me, I can't really talk about the twist or, you know, any of that. But this one, it's more upfront, but then it also is about two characters finding themselves, and there's, you know, the romantic element as well. So it is a mashup again. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. I love that type of genre. And I just want to encourage people to put questions in the chat if you have questions for either Brianna or myself, or even for third place. All questions are always welcome. Okay, I do have one note here. I wanted to ask you about a power chord smile and what that means to you.
Ah, yeah. So this kind of, I don't know where it came from when I was drafting, but it was just this metaphor that Leo started thinking about Hannah's smiles as like a musical thing, and he wanted to get one that was not just a little weak little like strum or like just, you know, one string being like weakly twanged. He wanted like a power chord smile, and he spends the entire book trying to get that. So yeah, it was a cool, like it kind of just grew over time, and I love that. And somebody made some pencils for me today, and they posted on Instagram, and one of them was power chord smile, and I was like, iconic element of the book.
No, I love that. And I loved how sort of music and rock music really framed Leo's thinking, and Hannah's as well. As you know, it was also important to her. I love all the similes and sort of metaphors that flowed from there. It was really well done.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited for Mirror Girls. I want an arc ASAP.
I have very, very limited arcs. I have one left, and you know, maybe I'll get to send it to England to you after I finish taking all my photos.
Oh, plus no. I'll just wait. I'll just wait till February 9th and get my pre-order.
Yeah, you know, the thing with the sort of book business is it kind of looks like the arcs might be on their way out, which makes me so sad because it's such an exciting part of the process. But you know, they got to do what they got to do. Mirror Girls is in many ways like a very different book from Agnes at the End of the World. There's no pandemic, there's no sci-fi element, but there are ghosts. So it has this sort of haunted house ghost story vibe. And I really do think that writers over the course of their career sort of return to these major themes that interest them. And I just love to see that with other writers. So I was personally very excited to hear about your next book as well. And I can't wait to talk to you in like 10 years and sort of see what your book is like and the ways that you're exploring the things that are important to you. Have you heard from any teenagers or young readers about your book and how they've enjoyed it?
I have had some really awesome messages and stuff. It's still really early. So I think I had like a lot of, you know, adult bloggers and stuff reading. So it's really early, but I have had some really nice, like, you know, things that just made me think, oh, this is like exactly what I wanted, you know, a reader to feel and to come, you know, across in the read. So yeah, it's been really nice.
Amazing. Do you think that you'll always write young adult literature?
I'm not sure. I do have this idea for, you know, like a high fantasy YA that I might get to one day, but I feel totally unprepared for that. Like, I don't know how to write high fantasy. So who knows? Yeah, who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
High fantasy, I would say that is a genre that intimidates me as well. Like, I that and sort of the space opera genre both feel very, very difficult. But
yeah, you have to, yeah, there's just so much world building. But I mean, like, your world building is amazing. So I think you could totally do it. It's just a different type of world building, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's all about sort of that atmosphere and the vibe. But what are you reading right now? Can you recommend any books to us?
Yeah, so I've been reading like a lot of debuts. I've made some lovely friends. So this is one of my favorites, American Beitia by Anharada Rajakar. It's really, really amazing. Like, super highly recommend. Also, The Hollow Inside by Brooke Lauren Davis is also so spooky and amazing. And very like down with the patriarchy, which I love.
I love that. Yeah.
And also The Wide Starlight by Nicole L'Esperance is just like, it's not magical realism because that's a different kind of thing, but it is magical, and it, you know, it's just lush and beautiful and set in, you know, Norway and icy places. It's so cool.
That's amazing. I do love books about Norway. Half of my family is Norwegian and the other half were Black, which is how I happened. But so that's fantastic. I love hearing that recommendation.
Definitely try it out. It's so cool. And like a lot of the like mythology and like lore of, you know, that region is in there, and it's so cool.
Can I ask you about, I feel like it's the 20 Wonders. How are you guys holding up?
Yeah, I think we're doing okay. It's been so awesome to have them, actually, because, you know, when you get that book deal, like there's no handbook to be like, so then this will happen and then you will feel this way and then, you know, you should be doing this. So we're all kind of like muddling through it together, and like some people are a few steps ahead on the journey and they, you know, pass their wisdom along, and it's been a really, really helpful resource. And anytime I'm like unsure of something, I'm like, I just pop in there and I'm like, do you guys know anything about this? And yeah, they're so amazing. And I haven't had like as much time to, you know, spend in there as I want, but it has been really good.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, do you have any general advice that you would give for people who are aspiring authors and particularly aspiring young adult writers?
Ooh, for writers, I always say the revision thing, really, like, because I see so many people like just kind of get stuck after they've finished that first draft, and they're like so protective of it, and they don't want to, you know, pry themselves away from that. But sometimes like a story, you know, could really make it. You just have to change a few things like in a really significant way. And I see people giving up on books, like, and I'm like, you know, this, you shouldn't give up on it yet. Like, you just need to actually really make changes. So that's my like general writing advice. For YA, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, read the genre, right? Like, read as much YA as you can, see what's working, see what's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I really relate to what you said, the first thing you said. I wrote my first book in 2007 when I was just a teenager myself. It was a YA book. It was called Doormat. And it was about just a teenage girl whose best friend became pregnant and sort of dealing with that. It was very contemporary, and it was just, you know, I was working through the idea of female friendships, and this was like my magic book because it just sort of came into my life fully formed. I feel like I just typed it over a summer, and it's sort of, you know, then this chain of events happened. And for many, many years, I couldn't figure out how to write a second book because I hadn't really cracked that, you know, you need to revise it. You don't just abandon something if you write it and it's not perfect to begin with. So I'm always trying to give that advice to writers too, that, you know, you just need to treat that first draft as like a play space and a fantasy space. It's like you're writing on the chalkboard, and then after that you get it down permanently. But you can get a real attachment to the words that you put on the page. And anyway, so that was huge for me, just sort of learning that when you really care about an idea, you'll work on it as opposed to just, oh, well, let's try the next one because you just want it to be done, essentially. Yeah.
Definitely.
And did you want to be a writer when you were a kid?
I did, but like, so I always loved any creative writing assignment at school. I remember, you know, in second grade, they were like, we're going to make our own books and we're going to, you know, sew the binding and then write the story and, you know, plan it all out. And I just was so into that. And I was a bookworm. Like, I'd take my book to, you know, dinner and try to read it under the table and stuff. So I think, like, when people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said writer. And as I got older, it just seemed really impossible. Like, it seemed like, you know, just an impossible dream that was unattainable. So I went for something more stable, a career in theater. But it actually went, like, that was actually quite stable. I worked backstage for 15 years at ballet companies and stuff. So then I sat down about 5 years ago and I was like, I'm really going to try this because I've always wanted to be a writer. And like I had written on and off, and it was always kind of an outlet and a way to process things. And I just felt like I had this story particularly, and I was like, I'm really going to give it a go. And I don't know, I maybe should have given up after a year, but then, I didn't. And I really pressed on for 5 years, and this happened. So it's amazing. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I can see, having these characters, why you wouldn't give up. It's just really is so beautiful, and I can't recommend it enough. And actually, people that I'm recommending it to in general are young people who want to be writers, because of the way Hannah is sort of, she knows that this is something she's passionate about. She knows that she's not actually sure if she has talent for it, but she knows that it makes her happy. And there's also this fear. And so whenever I meet young people who want to be writers, and this is the book that I tend to recommend to them.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. What kind of stuff have you read lately? What?
Well, I just read My Contrary Mary, which is one of the sequels to the My Lady Jane books. They're very funny, sort of very interesting books. But and until this, I'd actually been on a little bit of a fiction reading hiatus. I was reading a lot of nonfiction, trying to prepare for. I'm writing my second book now, set in the South. Agnes at the End of the World is set in the American West. It's set in Arizona, but Mirror Girls is set in Georgia, particularly during the time of Jim Crow. So it's about two Black biracial sisters, one who's light enough to pass for white, like myself, and one who's obviously Black, who are separated onto other sides of the color line during Jim Crow. And they have to sort of find their way back to each other. So I was reading a lot of sort of plantation stories and Jim Crow stories for that book. The next book is also going to be set in Georgia. So I've just been reading a lot of travel guides, like The Lonely Planet Savannah, which I know is like not super interesting, but that's sort of one of the ways that I try and get into different worlds. And I'm actually hoping to make a trip out to Georgia. Do you do any special research for your settings? Or I know in this case, you lived in Texas.
Yeah, so I went to high school in Texas, so I think I was drawing a lot from that. My next book is actually set in like Pennsylvania coal mining town that's like kind of been totally revamped. And I have not been to Pennsylvania yet. My dad is from there. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I should go on like a little research trip, but when flights are available.
Yeah, and affordable, right? And that's, I had this scare. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to make it to Georgia because of the sort of how costly everything is right now. But if you take that trip to Pennsylvania, maybe we can meet in the middle or something.
Oh, yeah, really. Yeah, I hope that like once bookish events come back and stuff, maybe we'll see each other on the circuit. That would be like a dream. I just want to. I've met so many awesome people, and I want to meet them in real life and have some drinks or chips and salsa or whatever.
I know, that would be so wonderful. And June, there was a whole group of us who came out sort of in summer with 2020 books, and not all of them about pandemics, I'm happy to say, but about various things. And, I met a lot of people, made a lot of writer friends, and I'm still dying to see most of them. We are always sort of thinking about like, oh, maybe we should meet in California. And then of course everyone says, no, you should meet in New York, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever coast they happen to be on, but yeah.
Did you have like a similar kind of like resource group for when you well, it wasn't your debut, but.
Yeah, I actually sort of just treated it like my debut because I was so young when Doormat came out that I didn't even know that like other people had books coming out. I was very unplugged from all of that. So I'm just going to start over. And I did love being in the Facebook 2020 group. And I found out that the group before us, the 2019 folks, they felt so sorry for us when we came out during the pandemic, and we all had this, live events scheduled that were then canceled. Yeah. And so there was a certain amount of sort of, it's probably a very interesting science fiction document, our Facebook group, realizing what sort of year we were about to have. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we all kind of came into it late enough that we knew like nothing would be the same. But yeah, having events be canceled and stuff, that must have been awful. we keep thinking like maybe we'll be able to have an in-person thing. No, not yet, not yet.
Exactly. Well, I am very grateful to like third place books, and this is my second event with you guys, and just like these bookstores making space for us to do things virtually has made such a huge difference, and it's been such an amazing way to connect with people.
It has been awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, last question for you. Are you able, and then maybe we can get even just some questions from Allie, anything that you'd like to hear about from us. But what books were most inspirational to you when you were growing up as a teenager?
Ooh, when I was a teenager, I was talking about this one the other day on another event. I was the most impactful book on me, I think, was Tamara Pierce's Alana series, and then she has a second series and a third series. There's loads, and those, I think I read them at just the right time, but they just kind of opened up this whole different way of writing and storytelling for me. So those came at an amazing time. What else when I was a kid?
I certainly remember the Tamara Pierce books. They were like revolutionary for me too, especially like a young woman. I was like, you know, it's wonderful.
Totally. And I must confess, like, I was really hooked on the romantic angles of that again. I'd like go through and highlight all the kissing scenes. So, I mean, I read other stuff too, like, you know, Sweet Valley and Babysitter's Club, all of the standards. There was really not as much as there is now for teenagers. There's so much YA now for people to find exactly like their niche, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's so amazing that there's so many different types of books out these days.
Super cool. Yeah. And then some YAs that like I read when I was a bit older, but have really informed my writing. Emily Henry did about 4 YA novels, and especially her second one, A Million Junes, was just like incredible. And it was a speculative kind of thing. It has like, you know, some very impossible elements, and I just loved the way she mixed those in, and it just really gave me confidence to do that as well with my book.
I'm gonna shoot that one straight to the top of my TBR because I've seen it around, and I did read Beach Read last year, which was one of her adult books, but I've seen that and I've been curious, so that's a great recommendation. I think for me, the most impactful book in terms of my YA career was not YA at the time, because you're right to point out that it sort of wasn't such a large category, but Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. I think that's what sort of showed me that like a true genre mashup type book was possible, that you really sort of elbow your way into a genre and break things and do things that are different and with different types of characters. So
yeah. I love mashups. Like I feel like sometimes like there are very like strict categories for things, and it was really hard to like pitch my book, and like there's just not, you know, people aren't as receptive to that, but when you like find one that's really good, it can be so amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And you know, I have heard, you know, people say that in YA you don't need really genre bending work because everybody is new to everything anyway, but I just really strongly disagree, because I want things to keep changing and keep evolving, and so you want actually as much newness as you can get.
Definitely, for sure. Let's see if Allie is there. Allie.
Hello, I'm back. So at this point, audience, my friends, if there are any questions that you have, now is the time. Go ahead and throw those in the Q&A. But in the meantime, I have some. So a question I always love to ask authors is, if there was like a trail of books that led you to write this book, what books would be on that list?
Trail of books.
That is so good. That's such a great idea.
Do you want to go first, or shall I take a step?
Let me see. Okay. I think that probably The Parable of the Sower is the very first book that set me on the trail to be writing Agnes at the End of the World, followed by a memoir by Carolyn Jessup. And oh my goodness, you guys, so my paperback is out, but this book came out a year ago, so I'm going to blank on the title, but Carolyn Jessup, she wrote a couple of memoirs about her escape. It's called Escape. Escape by Carolyn Jessup is a book about, her experience leaving the cult of the, fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. And I remember thinking at the time, basically that cult was in my neck of the woods growing up in Arizona, and I would see them on television. And I was so struck by the fact that all these women and children stayed in this highly oppressive, highly patriarchal, extremely terrifying situation where they were sort of always hanging over your head that the world was going to end in fire. And if you didn't follow their rules, you'd be doomed. And I read this book about a woman who actually did escape, and I wanted to better understand her strength of will and sort of that internal power that she had to sort of make the choice that was right for her and live a different life from the one that she'd been raised to live. So I was really struck by that. I also feel like the Walking Dead comics, I don't know if you remember those comic books, but even before the television shows, that was kind of a big seed of just the creepiness and that kind of zombie novel. And then there's a book by Neville Shute called On the Beach. And it's about the world is ending as the result of a nuclear disaster. And it's also at its heart, I think that one is a love story. It was kind of a mashup between, a marriage novel and a nuclear apocalypse novel. And I feel like that's the trail that led me to Agnes. There's probably some others that I missed along the way.
Your answer is so literary and excellent, and mine is going to be like the opposite. I think because YA was a lot thinner back in the day, I read a lot of like my mom's and grandma's paperback romance novels. And honestly, I loved them, and it definitely informed who I am as a person and who how this book kind of came to be. And then weirdly, there's that scene in the Vanilla Sky movie where he's in the middle of Times Square and there's no one there. That stuck in my head.
I thought of that while I was reading your book.
And then I've read stuff after I drafted this, before I published it, but after I drafted it, that I was like, oh wow, if I had read this before I'd come up with this idea, it would have really helped, but I hadn't. And those are If I Stay by Gail Forman. My book has some really similar themes, and it really takes a hard look at facing possible death in a really realistic way. What else? Emily Henry's A Million Junes, and her first book, The Love That Split the World. So yeah, romance novels. And then those ones that I read after were kind of confirmed that I was going in the right direction with what I wanted to be putting out in the world.
I love that. That's a great question, Allie.
Oh, thank you. We love paperback romance novels. So
Excellent.
2 thumbs up for those. So let's see. I kind of was thinking about you are both kind of debuts / kind of debuts. Brianna, you were talking about how you've been kind of working on these for 5-ish years. Was this the book that you began at the beginning of those 5 years?
Yeah, it was, which I think is really unusual as well. I just couldn't stop. I just wanted to get it there, and I got really stubborn about it. And so I did query the first version of it, and I was getting a lot of full requests, but nothing was happening. And I was like, there's something wrong, and I can't figure out what it is. Because you don't really get a lot of feedback, from agents when you're querying. So I was in a program called Write Mentor, and it's kind of UK based, but so I was a mentee for that, and that's when I did the rewrite. So it has been a bit of a long journey, but yeah, I couldn't give up on this. I don't know why. I just wouldn't let myself.
So my question is kind of related, but and you've kind of already said that you don't know, so I'm sorry. But for both of you, how did you know that this was the one? Sorry.
I don't know. Yeah. I think like partway through drafting, I was just like, there's really something here, and I really want, like, I could see the best version of the book, and I wanted to get there, and I knew that there was something hopefully special, and I hope other people think that, you know, that they find that special little thing. And yeah, I was, maybe part of it was also just being really afraid to do something else. Like, I think, you know, I was like, well, if this isn't it, then I don't know what I'm going to do next. And after, you know, getting my agent and my book deal, I could see like more of that. And I have loads of ideas now, and I just wasn't really sure. I wasn't really confident at that stage to try something else. So I just kept going with it.
For me, it was, I think, between my very first book and this book, I just had a lot of growing up to do, and I had to figure out sort of what themes were really important to me and what mattered to me. Because when you make a commitment to a book, it's like deciding to live with another person for a full year. It's like picking a roommate or like a spouse. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's a huge commitment. And I knew that this had to be the one, like once I had the cult idea and the pandemic idea, the pandemic influence for me came from, I was pregnant in Hawaii during the Zika epidemic, and I was very scared about sort of, you know, what might happen and the ways that like a public health crisis could turn our lives inside out. Zika was a virus that really affected, you know, pregnant women and their infants, mostly in Latin America. But in Hawaii, we had the correct mosquitoes to sort of transmit it. And I already caught this crazy mosquito-borne illness. And so I was just in a panic. And my baby, my daughter, she was actually born on Election Day, 2016. And so I guess the feminist themes just felt super important to me at that time. Like, we took her home, and, you know, I asked my mom, who's pregnant, who's president, and she said, you know, it's, you know, not going to be a woman president for your daughter's birthday. And I guess it just felt like I had to say this now. Like, I had to work through my thoughts about sort of feminism and dismantling the patriarchy, and also my fears about what could happen to the world, and also to those themes in the event of a huge public health crisis. I feel like it almost just reached like a boiling point. It was also kind of like, you know, this one or I don't even know what, and all my ideas came flooding out sort of after I'd finished this book. So I sort of agree with you, Brianna, that it's like, you know, be stubborn about that first one, that one that you really feel strongly about. Just be stubborn, because it will open doors, like even in your imagination later on.
Wow, what timing. The book for like all the way along, you couldn't have foreseen a pandemic, and yet wild. So so you guys kind of both touched on this, but I love this question, and I'm stealing it from Taya Albright, who actually stole it from Daisy Johnson. But so the trail goes on. But what were you like as like a child reader? What was your initial interaction with literature that sort of sparked this journey?
I don't know. I mean, I like weirdly can't remember like my first like 7 years. So things really did start coming to me like when I was reading Babysitter's Club and stuff. And I think I just kind of read anything that I could get my hands on. But nothing really started feeling, you know, like it had an impact on me until I was probably 12 or 13. And then those teenage years are so crucial. So what you read in those years can really like build you as a person. So yeah, I mean, like I was always reading, and I know I was, you know, taking books to dinner, but before that point, I'm not sure that I could even tell you what they were. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just like a very voracious reader. I read sort of everything that I could get my hands on as a child. my mother is also a writer, and so she writes middle grade books, but at the time she was writing adult books. And I remember being sort of a young adult, like maybe a tween, not quite a teenager. And I was trying to read one of her books, the book that was like dedicated to me. And I was like, well, I should be able to read this because I mean, it's for me, you know? And this book is called Voodoo Dreams, and it's like a super dense, you know, wonderful novel for adults. And I just couldn't make heads or tails of it. It was like, you know, when you're like 7 and you try to read the New York Times, it was like that. And I felt like, you know, oh my goodness, there's this whole world that is so complex and so interesting, and I can't understand it yet. So I have to like work really hard to sort of get there. And by the time I was a teenager, you know, I was able, I mean, I feel like it's tough as a YA writer, because I'm saying like, you know, I wanted to learn to read adult novels and sort of skip that YA middle grade phase, but I loved all those books, and they all sort of got me there. And I remember the first time that I was really able to read her book, and that was like a very important moment for me as a reader. But yeah, reading to me, it was like about striving, and it was about, you know, trying to understand sort of what's out there and reaching out into this much larger world. And it really still is like that today. Like, it's just really like, there's so much that you can access. And yeah, so I love young adult literature also, just for being kind of that bridge. Yeah.
I remember like when I was maybe 12 or something, I went in the library and I was like, I'm going to find the biggest book here and I'm going to read it. Like, I just was always like, I need more content.
I think I did that too. Yeah.
Amazing.
So we are down to our last few minutes. My last question, I love this. I love hearing the answers to this question. But what was your best day writing this book? And what was your hardest day writing the book?
Right. I'll go first if that's okay. My best day, like randomly, was I don't often write on paper, but for some reason I just got out some loose paper. I was at my in-laws' house, and I just was writing at their kitchen table, and I wrote like an entire chapter, and it's still like, I think it's still the best chapter in the book, like writing wise. And it just happened, and I was like, I don't think we've ever changed anything about that chapter, and it just felt so you know, authentic. And it had to do with some of the ballet stuff as well, which was really neat. Worst moment. Probably when I was trying to make that decision to do the rewrite. I was just in turmoil for a few weeks, and I had like a deadline to meet with my mentor and stuff, and I was just like, I don't know if I can do this, but you know, I eventually came around and I was like, I'm gonna really give it a try, even though it's so scary. So those were really tumultuous weeks.
I love that. Yeah, I vividly remember my best day was writing that scene of sort of Beth, Agnes's sister, trying to escape from this dark cellar, the bunker really that the prophet had put the people in for the end of the world, where she was definitely going to die, and trying to, you know, dig down into her heart and prove to herself that she deserved to live and that she wanted to live. I just felt that was one of those days when you just feel like you're on fire as a writer. My worst day was definitely in revisions, trying to get into the prophet's head. He has, you know, this very stern idea of the world, and he was just evil. You know, he was an evil character to me, but my editor was like, you know, you need to figure out his why, and you need to get a little bit closer to him. And I was really scared to do that. And I decided to try and write a scene from his perspective while I was at my mother-in-law's house for some reason. And like, it was just a very tough writing day. And, you know, the writing sort of takes you places, you empathizing with the cult leader. So that was a hard writing day, but it was also really important to the book that exists now.
Which is so epic and amazing. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Your book is so perfect and wonderful. I just like, seriously, I recommend this to everybody, Brianna. Everybody.
And two like gorgeous covers. So
I know, right?
all the way around, wonderful.
Look how amazing she is. I want to be Agnes, basically.
All right. So it looks like we are at the end of our afternoon / evening / night, if you're Brianna. So I'm going to just take this moment to say one more huge thank you to both of you and to our audience. This has been such a great conversation. I loved hearing your thoughts about apocalypse, especially considering the strange year that we've unexpectedly had. Everyone who would like to get your hands on copies of You and Me at the End of the World and or Agnes at the End of the World, go ahead and follow links. I left a bunch of links in chat, so go peek through those. If you are local, of course, come on in. We would love to see you. Let us know what you thought of this event, either online or in person. Brianna and Kelly, thank you so much for being here one more time. And with that, I think this is where we let the awkward waving commence.
Okay. Thank you so much for hosting us, Allie.
It was a delight. Thank you for being here.
And thank you, Kelly. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.